So far in this module, we've been looking at stylizing our forms, getting them to lay out right and look good, and essentially using Bootstrap to add the proper classes to our elements. But let's look at data binding. How do we get data into the form and out of the form? And first of all, we need to look at where the data will be stored. And the data gets stored in the $scope variable in the controller. This is the model. Whatever we attach to this scope variable, we'll have access to that data in our markup. And the way to access that data in a form control is with the ngModel attribute. By specifying this attribute, say, on an input text field, we can look into the $scope object and two-way data bind to whatever information we need. Now, one important note when working with two-way data binding in forms is that you do not want to use ngBind or the double curly braces. These two items are essentially the same thing. ngBind is just the attribute form, and the double curly braces is used to specify an expression in an HTML element. But these are for one-way binding only. The expression will get updated as your model changes, but there's no way to use these items to actually get data back inside your model. So when it comes to using forms and two-way data binding, you want to use ngModel. And let's take a look at how we do that. So I'm in eftemplate.html, and I'll close the side panel, and you can see that I already made the changes. Looking at our input for the full name, I added the ngModel attribute, and I'm setting it to employee.fullname. So what this is going to do is it's going to look at our $scope object on the controller, then look for the employee field and grab the full name element out of it. And as this input control changes, it'll put any type changes back into employee.fullname within the scope. And ngModel also works on the text area element. Here I'm setting ngModel to employee.notes, and ngModel also will work on our select element. I'm setting ngModel to employee.department. If we look down further at the checkboxes, you can see I set ngModel on each of these. The company car will get employee.perkcar, stock options will be perkstock, and 6 weeks vacation will be perk 6 weeks. Looking at the radio buttons below that, you can see that each ngModel attribute is going to be set to the same value. We're setting it to employee payroll type for each of these mutually exclusive radio buttons. We have it here, here, and here. So Angular will compare the payroll type with the value. If the value is W2, this radio button will get checked. If the payroll type is 1099, then this one will get checked, and so on. Likewise, if the user clicked on none for the payroll type, it'll take the value none and stuff it in our scope employee.payrolltype. So this form is all set up for two-way data binding now. Just make sure that you use ngModel and not ngBind. And another mistake would be to do something like, instead of using ngModel for the input, would be specifying something like this. Value equals, and then specifying the employee.fullname in double curly braces. This will only do one-way data binding. When the form starts up, it'll take the employee full name and put it into the value. But as this value changes, it will not get placed back into employee.fullname. So for two-way data binding, just always use ngModel.